After the major success of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, an inevitable third entry of the Mega Drive series was underway, with Sega Japan able to win back Yuji Naka after he left and defected to the Sega Technical Institute in the US, offering him the role of producer of the game. In 1993, the team was in the process of developing the follow-up with lofty ambitions and the goal of hitting a home run with this entry, with wanting multiple levels and said levels being bigger in size. Unfortunately, as development continued, it became quickly apparent that the game was simply too ambitious, as making the larger stages took longer than the team thought, and several factors came into play to change the course of Sonic 3's development. First hurdle the team had to overcome was a commitment made by Sega to have the game come out to coincide with McDonald's promotion of the Blue Hedgehog. In addition to that, Sega was quickly discovering that the technology to support this next large title was not yet available, as the cartridge sizes were limited in space, meaning that the game would not fit with everything the team planned for. Sonic Team reluctantly cut the game in half to satisfy these requirements, with the first being Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and the second becoming Sonic and Knuckles. But the developers didn't want the two games to feel like two distinct experiences, so they brainstormed ways to make two separate cartridges feel like one seamless experience, which resulted in the idea of having the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge feature a slot where you could stack Sonic the Hedgehog 3 to link the two games together and make the massive Sonic game as originally intended. Thus, lock-on technology was born. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 was released on the 2nd of February 1994 in the US, with Sonic and Knuckles being released 8 months later on the 18th October. Like the predecessors, both Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles received critical acclaim, with both games selling over 1 million copies, and critics praising both games as the best and superior entries of the series, thanks to its expansive levels and replayability of the lock-on technology, as well as the visuals being very well received. As with past titles, Sonic 3 and Knuckles play similar from its predecessors, as a side-scrolling 2D platformer video game. In Sonic 1 and 2, there was only a shield item to protect you from harm. Here in S3 and K, the shield has been replaced by 3 different shields, known as the elemental shields. You have the fire shield, which protects you from any fire hazard, the bubble shield, which encases you with a large bubble, giving you an infinite supply of air while underwater, and the lightning shield, where nearby rings are magnetically drawn towards you, allowing ease of collecting rings. The shield also protects you from electrical obstacles. All shields can repel small projectiles from badniks and can also allow Sonic to perform a new double jump move with the shields, an air dash for the fire shield, the bounce for the bubble shield, and a double jump for the lightning shield. Following what was in Sonic 2, each zone has 2 acts, but instead of having a boss fight at the end of Act 2, there was also a boss fight at the end of Act 1, acting more like a mini or sub-boss. The game marks the first appearance of Knuckles the Echidna, a red anthropomorphic echidna and a guardian of the Master Emerald. And just like Sonic and Tails, he is also playable with unique abilities. He has the traditional jump, roll and spin dash attacks, but also 2 new moves exclusive to him. Firstly, Knuckles has the ability to glide. Jump in the air and hold the jump button a second time and Knuckles will glide and float towards until he makes contact with the ground or wall, or when you release the jump button. This is useful for gliding across wide gaps to reach a ledge, or even take out enemies when they collide with Knuckles. Well, Knuckles. If you glide into a wall, you'll immediately grab hold at the same position, able to scale up and down the wall. For this video, we'll be covering the fan game project Sonic 3 Angel Island Revisited, or simply Sonic 3 Air, created by UKROT, which aims to be an enhanced port of the PC release of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, built upon the Steam release. This fan game features widescreen support, 60 frames per second, and a remastered soundtrack, as well as other features. Essentially, if Christian Whitehead did a mobile port of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, which is what everyone wants. And Sonic 3 Air is the best way to play the game, until Sonic Origins comes out sometime in 2022 on consoles. The game starts off with Sonic and Tails travelling across the ocean via the tornado. Sonic then jumps up and turns into Super Sonic and dashes across the seafloor before reaching Angel Island. Knuckles makes his debut by stealing Sonic's Chaos Emeralds after literally punching him out of Sonic's super form. He briefly chuckles and the game starts. Angel Island Zone, a tropical jungle located near the coast of Floating Island. The area is full of vegetation with exotic plants and palm trees decorating it. There are also many waterfalls and water pools, with unstable wooden bridges and large trees present. As it is the first act of the game, it is the easiest, giving the player basic platforming sections to introduce them to the game. Most alternative routes at the start are located in the top part of the act, which can be reached through basic platforming, sometimes rewarding the player with monitors. The bottom sections are more straightforward and shorter, whilst featuring more enemies. Despite this, some basic gimmicks such as the shuttle loops and vines are present, giving a variety of mechanics to use. Act 1 is less linear in the first half, allowing curious players to explore. It is a very simple, straightforward zone, though also unorthodox as it contains a number of cutscenes amidst the gameplay. Come on! Afterwards, a flamecraft appears and sets Angel Island Zone on fire, drastically altering its appearance from a lush green jungle into a burning inferno. Not your average run-of-the-mill Green Hill clone for sure. Eventually the player will be taken down to the bottom part of the act, which they will slowly ascend to the top part and reach the flamecraft for the first boss of the game. The first sub-boss is Robotnik's Flamecraft, which is a hovering robot that is equipped with a flamethrower and rocket launchers. It is required to hit it 6 times to be destroyed, which is easily achieved if you jump on it as soon as it hovers down and bounce on it in the process. Now you may have noticed that passing a checkpoint, stars may appear above it, performing exactly the same in Sonic 2. While that is correct, it doesn't take you to the special stages, it takes you to the bonus stages, 1 of 3 to be exact. If you enter a bonus stage with 20 to 34 rings, you'll be transported to the slot machine minigame, which functions like a combination of Sonic 1's special stages and Casino Night Zone from Sonic 2, as the camera rotates while the player navigates a large arena to reach a colourful looking slot machine in the middle, with several bumpers and jump stands set around the machine. The slot machine basically functions the same way it did in Sonic 2. The purpose in this bonus stage is to rack up as many rings as possible. Making contact with the gold block sends the player out of the bonus stage, just like in Sonic 1. If you have 35 to 49 rings when entering a bonus stage, you'll be taken to the glowing sphere stage. Here, the player's character automatically gravitates towards and orbits around numerous glowing spheres scattered around the level. Triangular bumpers and flippers are featured on the side, as well as regular bumpers. The player has to use the momentum given by the glowing spheres to propel themselves upwards. The player may come across small lightning balls that, when made contact, become gumballs that start flowing upwards slowly. Collecting gumballs in this bonus stage rewards you with various goodies such as extra lives, rings, and 3 of the elemental shields. You really can't mess around and take your time, as there is a swirling field of energy that rises upwards and touching it ends the stage, but if you do get up far enough, the bonus stage ends as well. If you have required 50 rings or more when passing a star post and enter the bonus stage, you'll be transported to the Gumball Machine. Here, the player is in a tall corridor with bumper walls on both sides and a giant Gumball Machine at the very top. You can use the bumpers to spring upwards to the top and crank on the machine to dispense a random gumball that will fall downwards until it goes past the death barrier, or if you collect it. Hitting a bumper will make it disappear, which will make the Gumball Machine to slide downwards, increasing difficulty of successfully turning the crank without falling into the pit. Once you fall down the pit, the bonus stage ends and you return to the main game. Act 2 of Angel Island is similar to Act 1, but with water pools being more prominent here than the previous act. Act 2 features more platforming and makes use of simple puzzles involving switches, which are mainly used for opening up pathways to progress. At the end of the act, the player will find a flying battery blimp trying to attack them by launching and dropping missiles. After dodging all the potential nuclear warheads, Robotnik will be spotted in this flamecraft, flying around in the background and disappearing in a waterfall. When Sonic crosses a wooden bridge, the flamecraft emerges from the waterfall and drops a fireball on the bridge, destroying it and creating a bottomless pit. The flamecraft will then disappear behind the waterfall, becoming impossible for Sonic to hit, and then emerge again in a new location to fire its weapons at Sonic. Robotnik will move around in certain patterns and fire 2 fireballs upon each emergence, and the cycle repeats, only allowing to land hits during those times. After landing their final hit, the flamecraft will be destroyed and the castle will slowly descend within the player's reach to jump up, hit the button and clear the zone. Our heroes spot Knuckles up above them, who sniggers and triggers a trap that destroys the bridge underneath them and fall down the waterfall.
Another Sonic game, which means special stages are back, baby!
Special stages are entered by jumping through giant rings hitting in the scenery throughout multiple locations in each act. The stages themselves are 3-dimensional and spherical in layout. As Sonic, Tails or Knuckles, you move across the surface of a giant checkered orb and have to hit a set amount of blue spheres while dodging bumpers and red spheres. Sometimes blue spheres are found in a square formation, and if you check all the blue spheres around the sides of a square, the field turns into rings. Collecting 50 rings gains a continue, and collecting all possible rings in the stage gains a perfect bonus, which results in an extra life. You're rewarded at Chaos Emeralds when all blue spheres are collecting in the stage, and collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds will unlock the ability to go supersonic, just like in Sonic 2. But this is no easy walk in the park. The longer you stay in the special stage, the faster the playable characters will move, raising the response time and risk of hitting a red sphere unintentionally. Should you touch any of the red spheres, the stage ends and you're transported back to the zone. But it would suck so much if you needed one more blue sphere and you get trigger finger and accidentally touch a red sphere.
I like to think of the special stages as being in a relationship, or you simply just get blue ball.
Hydro City Zone. Hydro City Zone is a large, underwater ancient temple system on floating island. In the background, large, purple coloured pillars are seen supporting the zone. The entire temple is also made of light brown, aqua green and grey stone bricks, some of which appear polished. This is Sonic 3's main water level and can be fairly troublesome in places, what with some lengthy underwater sections in Act 1 that you really want to hunt out a bubble shield for. While this is a water level, it's mostly speedy and fun, and you actually spend more time above the water rather than below it. The zone is crammed with loads of loop-de-loops and twisting sloping paths. If you're moving fast enough, you can actually sprint across right the surface of the water without falling in. There are also many routes that dip in and out of the water at various points, which you can switch between them. At the end of Act 1, the mini-boss is Dr. Robotnik's Whirlpool Machine. It is fought in a bowl-shaped arena half filled with water. Small missiles orbit the central body, acting as a shield as it's charged down both sides of the arena. After the Whirlpool Machine charges twice, it settles down on a pole-shaped turbine in the middle of the arena and activates it to create a whirlpool underwater. This stirs up the water in our heroes, rendering them and the boss unable to do anything until the stirring stops. Hits can be landed either while the Whirlpool Machine begins to activate the turbines or afterwards. After starting up the thrusters missiles again, the attack pattern repeats itself until it is defeated. Act 2 is spent mostly above the water, and more speeding, sloping roads that twist and twirl up and down and all around. And while there are very big open spaces as well, they are mainly used for the water chutes as they tip you down along a diagonal stretch, dumping you into the water where you run across the surface. You'll find yourself working your way through narrow horizontal corridors and long vertical shafts, making use of the various platforms and fans. There may be only one main route here, but it balances the basic rightward direction and weaves back and forth and up and down, basically using up every bit of the stage of the map. Overall, Hydro City has great background music and simple but challenging features make this stage a true favourite of mine, and many fans as well. Arriving at the end of Act 2, and you'll drop down onto a bridge with a corridor sealed off. Knuckles appears behind the block and hits another of his switches, which destroys the bridge and sends you down into the water and head towards a propeller, blasting you along the corridors with poles to grab onto and eventually arrive at the boss arena. Robotnik will descend in his Eggmobile into the water while spinning propeller, which will whip the water into a vortex, which you will have to avoid getting sucked in. After a few seconds, the propeller stops, causing the vortex to subside. The boss will slowly fly from side to side, dropping pipe bombs around, which explodes after a few seconds, and thus, the cycle repeats. There are multiple ways to land hits on the boss. You can land hits as the Eggmobile descends into turning into propeller, jump onto the subsiding vortex at the end as a temporary platform, which can be used to reach the boss, or jump above the pipe bomb before it explodes, which can be used to propel you into the air and enable hits on the boss. At the end of defeating Robotnik, a geyser erupts below Sonic and Tails and sends them flying out of the zone. Marble Garden Zone. Marble Garden Zone is an ancient ruined city and is one of the largest zones in Sonic 3. The background features orange mountains under a blue, clean sky. Some ruins covered in large mounds of vegetation also appear. The massive, rich and decaying gardens of the island are also surrounded by thick forests growing around the ruins of this lost civilization that once inhabited it. Many multiple routes, shortcuts and hidden secrets are to be discovered, with some only open to particular characters, making this one of the largest and most complex level ever constructed, with mixed speedy paths from its hilly inclines and trap-filled labyrinth mazes. Act 1 of Marble Garden has our characters traversing the hilltop and zeniths of the zone, with many tracks and sloping hills throughout.
Fun fact, Marble Garden Zone is the only zone in Sonic 3 that doesn't have any underwater sections. I only recently discovered this, and I replayed Sonic 3 numerous times in the past decade. Perhaps it's the reason why it's my favourite zone in the game.
Despite the lack of water, there are mud pits that are far more lethal, as in sinking on the way to the bottom is instant death. Other hazards include large spike balls that swing around in circles, and stone walls that smash into the ground. In terms of gimmicks, the zone features the exclusive spinning top, which you can ride along mid-air by running on it. Once you reach the end of the act, the tunnel bug will appear and immediately burrow into the ceiling. The battle takes place inside the temple, where rocks will fall from the ceiling to the ground, which some are spiky and capable of hurting the player upon contact, which is very similar to how the boss behaved in Mystic Cave Zone from Sonic 2. A short while after, the tunnel bug will emerge downward from the ceiling in an attempt to injure you, and eventually rise up again and repeat the pattern, giving you opportunities to attack. As mentioned earlier, this boss is pretty easy to deal with, given how slow it moves, giving you plenty of time to land multiple hits, especially if you have the lightning shield and take advantage of the double jump. Act 2 has the playable characters travel deeper into the ruins and groves of Marble Garden. Here, the zone makes greater use of its obstacles and features, from trackable switches to using pulley rifts to climb out steep slopes. As you progress, the terrain will shift and provide access to further locations. Act 2 is slightly more linear than Act 1, but it has such a clever arrangement of paths and features that makes up for it, and is why Marble Garden Zone is my favourite zone of the entire game. And it's something that no one really mentions about Marble Garden Zone. Similar to the tunnel bot in the previous act, Robotnik will make surprise appearances in his jet drill. Near the beginning of Act 2, inside a small temple, the surroundings begin to shake as a jet drill will pop out the ground and begin to drill into the ceiling, allowing Sonic, Tails, and or Knuckles to continue on normally through the zone. He will later reappear in another small temple doing the same thing as previously. However, after drilling to the ceiling and disappearing again, you'll proceed through the following sections of the act as the surroundings crumble and collapse, and will crush you if you're not fast enough. At the end of the act, Robotnik will slowly descend from above and destroy the ground, causing it to collapse. Now this is where the boss battle becomes unique. The battle takes place in mid-air, where our dual heroes follow the jet through the air as Tails carries Sonic, while Tails can fly indefinitely.
And this is the only time Tails will be able to fly indefinitely. Reasons why I have no goddamn idea.
After Robotnik has flown for some time, he will fly off screen and reappear and move in a straightish line to the opposite with the drill attachment, where you have to avoid it to not take any damage. You can jump and land hits on the jet drill, and Tails can catch you afterwards and continue to fly. If you miss the hit and fall off screen, Tails will follow to catch Sonic and pull him back up to the screen. This is my favourite boss fight out of the whole game, as it simply changes the traditional boss fights that take place on ground level and set it in mid-air, and it makes use of Tails' flight mechanics for this specific boss, and that you will control Tails' flight direction whilst trying to land hits as Sonic. After landing 8 hits, the jet drill will be destroyed and Robotnik will escape. A capsule will fly down and opening it will clear the zone. Tails will continue to carry Sonic as the sunset arrives and fly off screen. If playing as Knuckles, this is the first boss fight that differs from the Sonic and Tails playthrough. You'll take a different pathway which leads to a temple where the egg robot is piloting the jet drill. Here in this battle, the jet drill will fire a chain of iron balls from different locations. Then the jet drill will travel along the chain before repeating the process. The formation of the chain is different each time, where you have to watch where the chain will pop up, making this a more difficult variation of this boss fight. Carnival Night Zone. The carnival theme of the zone really comes into play with the full use of colour and wacky shapes and styles. The rows are patterned red and white with a lot of temporal structural framework around it, indicating the mobile and dynamic nature of any carnival that you may have visited.
You know, before someone ate a bat and ruined things.
To dazzle the eyes, there are also zigzag, triangular, diamond and wavy patterns, all with alluring flashing lights and bright, cheerful colours. There's plenty to see simply just by looking at the walls. Carnival Night happily provides Sonic 3 with its obligatory nighttime bouncy stage, complete with many of the hallmakers of its predecessors, such as irritating bumpers, although level structure tends to be more speedy and straightforward than the large pinball rooms of similar levels would allow. Narrow corridors and smaller rooms are a common staple here too, and they occupy a majority of the zone, based in with the confines of the vast carnival construction. Just like Marble Gun Zone, this is one of the largest levels in Sonic's history, and not only does it occupy a huge space, but the narrow paths wind back and forth and up and down and all around, backtracking all over each other. With a slightly creepy vibe, the very long and large Carnival Night Zone also boasts balloons, circus cannons, huge spinning walls, and what must be one of the most notorious, baffling objects ever conceived in Sonic history, the rotating drum block. Like the thinner ones in Hydro City, you rotate around on them while standing on top, operating as a useful platform or a hazard to crush you into the floor, ceiling or wall. The first boss of the Carnival Night is the self-destruct machine, which is encountered in an elevator room with a floor made of yellow and green blocks that descend down a vertical tunnel. The destruct machine will release its twirling spike-covered top that will bounce around the room, destroying the block floor upon contact, with the rest of the machine hovering side to side. Hitting it will stop it from moving. The spinning top acts as a platform, while also a hazard you must avoid the bottom part that is spiked. You only have a limited time to defeat this boss, as the spinning top will eventually destroy the whole floor, leaving you to fall to your death. And you cannot damage the boss directly. Once you hit the boss, a tube on its bottom will extend and surround itself with an electrical field that will hurt the player if they touch it. During this, you will have to let the spinning top bounce back into it to inflict damage, and repeat this numerous times until the boss is defeated, and then you can progress on to Act 2. Around halfway through Act 2, you'll encounter Knuckles again, which will sport his smirk and sniggles. He hits another of the switches and puts the whole zone in a blackout and all the bright neon lights are turned off. Although it's not completely dark, you're still able to see him progress, which leads you into a small underwater section and other different routes where you'll find another switch to turn the lights back on and keep continuing on.
Oh boy. We've reached it. It's the infamous Barrel of Doom!
You are trapped in a vertical shaft and must push one of the cylinders down the gap low enough to be able to escape through. This area is unavoidable, you'll encounter this no matter what route you take. While it appears to be a traditional jumping puzzle, it is not meant to be bypassed this way. All you have to do is simply press the up and down on the D-pad. You know, because that's just common knowledge to do that for that scenario.
And we really didn't have the internet to look up a guide, so we had to figure out the hard way. by getting frustrated because nothing is working and panicking because the clock is ticking before eventually getting our first ever time over.
After you're sent through a long series of speed up doorways through long corridors, you'll fall down an elevator vent, where at the bottom you'll find Knuckles standing around with another switch. He presses it, chuckles, and runs off, after which you go back up the vents and be taken up to the boss. As the player enters an open arena, Robotnik will appear from the right side of the arena in his energy ship and starts to follow from above. Eventually, a large dark green globe will drop onto the ground, and floor generators on this side of this energy ship will activate and rotate around it, creating a pillar of electricity. This turns it into electromagnetic and will draw the player towards it, if you are near it. Robotnik will pick up the globe and repeat the pattern, which is your best chance of attacking the energy ship. This boss has a tendency to take a long time to defeat due to limited chances of attacking it, since you can't hit the globe and the electricity pillar. It basically makes you play the waiting game and drags it out. If you're playing as Knuckles, then you're in luck. Knuckles skips this boss battle simply by taking a lower pathway that can only access at the start of Act 2, and reach the same room with only a capsule to destroy it at the end of the act. This makes this boss fight only exclusive to Sonic and Tails. Afterwards, you'll go into a cannon and be shot out to the next zone, unless you're Knuckles, in which you can just use a teleporter. Ice Cap Zone. The first ever ice themed zone in a Sonic game, and probably the most popular background music in Sonic's history. Ice Cap Zone kicks off with a classic snowboarding sequence featuring snowy mountains in the background with snow-topped trees on the steep hills with many lines of rings lying on the path. After the sequence, the player crashes into a wall and falls down into the caverns with an avalanche involved. The original Snowy Zone is fun and fast-paced, and an all-time favourite for many, including myself. Ice Cap Zone delves into internal icy caves and arctic wastelands, where the background is cold blue and dark in colour with huge pillars. There are also steep and slithery ravines, which can loop endlessly, similar to what was featured in Labyrinth Zone from Sonic 1. There are platforms connected with green chains to walls that will make you move in the direction of an upper arch if the player has gained enough speed. Instead of spikes, icicles are featured in the zone, as part of the zone's structure. There are also sets of icicles on walls and bigger, sharper icicles that can function as platforms after they fall down into a field of spikes. Many ice pillars function as crushes, which are usually set in hall sections. There are also snowblowers set on the ceilings which can freeze the character. There are many gimmicks in the game that have been affected by the zone's climate. Many of the primary objects in the game, such as the monitors, springs and switches, are frozen inside blocks device that the player must first break before being able to utilize them. Switches are used to break blankets of snow or reveal columns and pathways. The player can surf on platforms above the slithery ravines while breaking ice walls. After getting out of the cavern of Ice Cap and into the cold outside weather, we encounter the Act 1 boss, the Ice Ball, a floating grey machine with a main body and 3 magnetic ends. The Ice Ball summons 8 ice blocks from the snowy ground and uses them as a shield to protect itself, and swoops down in a U-shape across the screen. It will then launch the ice blocks into the air where they will eventually fall down to the ground, where you have to dodge them, and the attack pattern repeats. During the fight, the ice ball will be too high to reach at first, meaning the best chance to land hits is when it throws its ice blocks, since at this point it's at the closest to the ground and in range of Sonic's jump height. Act 2 is more fast paced than the previous act, with many smooth hills and loops. Several loops lead into twisting tunnels by breaking ice blocks below, similar to loops in Hilltop Zone from Sonic 2. Act 2 largely takes place outside, which has a river in the background with ice mountains and sheets of ice flows moving via parallax scrolling. There are also twisting underground tunnels, which lead to lower pathways with ice caverns that have deep water sections, which are mostly bottomless pits. Both the outside and cavern sections have bridges where several pathways fuse together into the main path. Act 2 also features purple trampoline gimmicks on columns that can send the player higher by pushing down then up on the D-pad. After arriving in the battle area, Dr. Robotnik will arrive in his freeze-o-matic machine. He will extend a tube with a platform and start hovering back and forth. Now you may think that you can simply get on the platform and land hits, but that will be too easy. The freeze-o-matic fires cold blasts in multiple directions and various patterns from the machine itself or underneath the platform, where contact in the firing will result in being frozen and lose your precious rings. Landing multiple hits will eventually make the tube of the freeze-o-matic break apart, leaving only the front exposed for inflicting damage, as the back is leaking out icy gas which will put you into a frozen prison if made contact. 2 more hits and Robotnik will fly away defeated and his eggmobile destroyed. Once the act is clear, our heroes will proceed and spin into a snow tunnel to the next zone. Launch Base Zone. Launch Base Zone is a tranquil lake nested between mountains and deserts of Angel Island overrun by Robotnik's machinery. The Death Egg is seen half submerged in the water with large red cranes and towers positioned around it, even at the lake as well, varying in size and structure. As a structure in itself, Launch Base Zone consists of a massive armed base with a yellow and purple colour scheme, which is much more colourful than previous mechanical levels. And the armed base theme is no joke, with the entire facility fully protected with an array of hazards, traps and machinery, such as an alarm system that will spawn a persistent number of badniks. Other hazards include crushing spikes and flamethrowers, among other obstacles. The structure of Launch Base Zone is quite long and will direct you back and forth at every opportunity before bringing you to the end. The ground is built in fairly stable chunks that are arranged across the map as large platforms and separated areas of ground. There's a fair bit of space between them for you to move around in, creating very large open rooms, both indoors and outdoors. It can be a speedy act with multiple long steep slopes and curls to hurl yourself down. The speeding gameplay will slow down when you get inside the several large buildings where platforming hopping skills are required and the main focus for the section. And you'll need to pay attention so that you'll be able to progress and not waste time. Before the mini boss, you'll be confronted by Knuckles again, and he'll throw a bomb down at the floor of the building and makes his escape as the bomb goes off and the explosion rises up. You'll have to leg it to avoid the destruction of the building. When that's done, the mini boss is on the east. Inside the building, the evil doctor releases the swinging and spikes from the crate, and then escapes. The mini-bots will follow the player while rotating its iron balls. It'll take a short pause afterwards and repeat the same pattern. This is the best opportunity to land a hit. However, once you jump, the machine will try to retreat further away so it cannot get hit. Therefore, you must be close enough to reach and land a hit before it retreats to a safe distance and out of harm's reach. Hitting it 3 times will destroy one of its iron balls, making it easier to dodge. Another 3 hits and the boss is destroyed. Knuckles' fight is basically the same except for one thing. There's 2 swinging spikes to defeat.
So if you're doing a Knuckles playthrough, you're gonna have so much fun playing with 4 iron balls. Wait a minute.
Act 2 removes the small towers and big buildings, and the long slopes are mostly made of thick, twisting black and white water pipes that you can run across on top, as well as transport through, similar to that of Chemical Plant Zone. For player progression, use of transport capsules, breaking through the red boxes which control and change color walls to progress, using rotating platforms, speed enhancers, circular tubes, and the water system itself are necessary to reach Robotnik's final challenge, if you are just playing Sonic 3. Firstly, we have the Ball Shooter, the first of 3 bosses fought at the end of Act 2.
Yes, you heard me right. The first of 3 bosses.
As you get close to the Death Egg, Dr. Robotnik jumps onto the Ball Shooter and starts to fire cannonballs from one of 2 hatches below the hill, where you have to dodge them. When the cannonball is fired from the lower hatch, it will roll to the left side of the screen and then roll back to the hill. The upper hatch will fire 2 ways. One that fire a cannonball so fast it goes off screen and doesn't return, or do exactly the same from the lower hatch, rolling back due to the not having enough momentum to get up the ramp. When the Ball Shooter is ready to fire a cannonball, a hatch will raise up, where it acts as a platform, allowing you to reach the cockpit to hit the Ball Shooter, making this the best and only way to land hits. Upon the Ball Shooter's destruction, Robotnik falls down along with the destroyed machine. After that, an Eggmobile will be available to use to progress across the lake towards the Death Egg. Before, you encounter Knuckles standing on the thin crane structure. You approach him,
ほう、向かってくるのか。逃げずにこのディオに近づいてくるのか。
近づかなきゃてめえをぶちのめせないんでな。
ほうほう。では十分近づくがよい。
and he returns the favor by punching you back. He chuckles when suddenly some rumbling occurs, which causes Knuckles to lose his balance and fall off, as the rocket behind you slowly takes off. With Knuckles gone, you proceed forward until you reach a small red hanging platform attached to the Death Egg. Now for the second boss. We have the Beam Rocket, a tall rocket craft powered by 2 pairs of rocket engines composed of 3 sections with a cockpit set on the top. The primary weapons it uses are its laser cannons, which fire twice each time the bosses pass across the screen. The craft is most easily attacked when it's rising up from below the floor, since the cockpit is the vulnerable spot. As you land hits, parts of the rocket gets destroyed, with the top part going first, followed by the middle section, and the last hit destroys the whole craft, leaving Robotnik escaping and flying to the top of the screen. Then the sky goes dark.
Now initially, if you were just playing Sonic the Hedgehog 3, the last boss fight would be Big Arm. If you're playing Sonic 3 and Knuckles as Sonic or Tails, then you would skip this boss fight and move on to the next zone. But since we're playing Sonic 3 Air, which combines Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic and Knuckles, we're facing Big Arm, baby!
Dr. Robotnik flies down in a heavily armoured modified Eggmobile known as Big Arm. It has spikes on top of the cockpit, making it difficult to land safe hits on it. He will start in his face by moving from each side towards you, with his arms reaching out in an attempt to grab and smash it into the ground. He will start his second phase by moving to the very top of the screen with his only arms visible, and proceeds to move back and forth until he stops and then drops you down to your level. Now he rests at the bottom with only the spikes visible, meaning you cannot land hits on him. You can only dodge at this point by constantly jumping over him as he moves back and forth, and then he'll rise back up and repeat phase 1 again, which is the only time you're able to land a maximum of 2 hits, provided you don't get grabbed and grand slam. Basically just dodge and jump, but not too high, and don't get grabbed. Sonic Team wanted to end Sonic 3 on a high note with this boss, and oh boy, they certainly did. Survived long enough and making sure to get hits in, and that's the final boss of Sonic 3. Landing the final hit will result in not only the destruction of Big Gum, but also the platform and the side poles attached on the death egg will catch on fire and explode, releasing it and cause it to slowly fall down and safely out of the way from the burning wreckage. The dark sky disappears, and in the background, the death egg falls out of the sky into the distance, surrounded by broken pieces, and eventually crashes back down on Angel Island. And we are only halfway through the Sonic 3 and Knuckles experience. Mushroom Hill Zone. After stopping the Death Egg's launch, Tails will airlift Sonic down from the freefall and land in the next zone. Going for something other than the standard tropical paradise for a change, the first level of Sonic and Knuckles follows the uncommon location of a deep woodland forest, characterized more than anything else by its colourful, animated mushrooms of varying sizes. In the background, we have extremely tall and thin, light brown tree trunks that reach high to the top of the level, with a clear sky between and mossing growing at their bases. The pathways have bright green dewy grass, and as you run along them, a great graphical touch throws tiny little yellow buds in the air and gradually floating back down. As grassy paths curve into speeding loops, they begin to constitute thick vines with much thinner ones around wrapping along them. Like Green Hill Zone, the ground follows a simple pattern and are various shapes and sizes of an oval base appearance and of a brown and dull yellow colour scheme. On top of this, Mushroom Hill is one of the most decorated zones, with pathways lined with a variety of funky fungi, some of which act as interactive objects such as trampolines or collapsing platforms off of ledges. Other smaller ones are purely decorative. Not long after starting, Sonic then spies on Knuckles closing the door to a passageway. Very sus indeed. For a first level of Sonic and Knuckles, it makes most of its large space with an array of interchangeable multiple routes stacked on top of each other. The upper routes are long, speedy vine pathways built into the layout, connecting everything together. They provide the level with its main source of pace, filling the map with loops and curves starting in all directions, and the lower routes are rarely flat, with the occasional internal corridors that further lead into more routes. With the zone having many branching pathways, you are able to cross them in numerous ways, such as the large pump devices that you can grab on and pull down to pump it up vertical and reach another area, to thin dry poles that you can grab on to propel yourself in using a bit of acrobatics and momentum to keep the speeding flow. All manner of slopes, steps and curves give the valley its characteristic hills and bumps in all areas. The first act boss is the Hi-Ho, which represents a robotic lumberjack, or at least the upper body of one. Hi-Ho uses an axe to chop down trees, sending the resulting chunks of wood flying towards the player. Eventually it will get its axe jammed at the bottom piece of the tree, only to go flying backwards once it gets loose, which then goes to the next tree and then repeats the cycle. The best time to land hits is between each swing of the axe once it's at reach of your jump height to be able to jump and land on top. After landing multiple hits, the boss gets defeated and ends the first act.
Now you're probably wondering why Knuckles was acting so sus at the beginning of the act, and there's a reason for that.
By going into the tunnel, you'll find a special stage ring, but it's no ordinary ring. This ring is flashing with different colours. By jumping into it, you'll be taken to an altar in Hidden Palace Zone where the Master Emerald is held. If you have collected all 7 Chaos Emeralds, you'll be able to go for the Super Emeralds by simply jumping on one of the emeralds and you'll be sent to the special stages. It's the same method as before, however these special stages are more challenging and require a lot of skill to complete them successfully. Once you collect a Super Emerald, it will appear back in Hidden Palace Zone, and if you manage to collect all 7 Super Emeralds, you will unlock the ability to go into a Hyper Form. Similar in appearance to Super Form, but now Hypersonic comes in all colours of the rainbow as he transitions from one to the other and has stars constantly circling around him. Hyperforms also leave 2 after images of themselves travelling behind them as they go. The speed and acceleration may be the same as the Superform, but Hyperform allows you to breathe underwater, and Hypersonic can perform a mid-air dash by double jumping, which subsequently causes the whole screen to flash and any nearby enemies will automatically be destroyed. Just don't spam the move too much if you suffer from epilepsy. Kicking off Act 2, another encounter with Knuckles occurs. Tugging on the lever makes the wind appear beneath Sonic, who tries to hold onto the ground as the wind pressure increases. Eventually the strong wind pressure blows Sonic upwards into the upper route section. Though different sections, the colour of the forest will change from green to red to tan, representing the different seasons. The rest of the act plays very similarly to what was featured in the first act, with more mushrooms, speedy vine loops, pump machines and other various badniks and objects. Passing the last checkpoint, a satellite sitting on the top of the step is seen emitting electricity up to the sky. Jumping on it or spin dashing into it will make it explode, and then Mushroom Hill will return back to its original appearance at the beginning, which implies the satellite was the reason for the seasonal changes. Out of the ground emerges Robotnik in the Jetmobile, a half pear-shaped blue shell with an Eggmobile exposed, with two medium thrusters connected at the bottom. The boss performs more of a minigame than a battle as you run through an endless runner section, chasing down the Jetmobile. During the chase, small groups of spike balls will appear between logs, requiring you to either jump over or run underneath them. Getting close enough that you are able to jump and hit the exposed Eggmobile while keeping in mind to avoid their thrusters as well. After landing hit, you will move back to the left of the screen to chase up again and repeat. Landing enough hits will make the Jetmobile start to explode and eventually collide into a tree as you run through the gap in said tree with a capsule to open and clear the zone. This boss makes it a little bit more unique than previous fights as you approach it different and have to pay attention to your surroundings whilst catching up in the automatic section when stopping is not an option, and I like that change. It may not be a major change of boss level design like in Marble Garden Zone, but you gotta give credit for a different change of pace than your traditional boxing battle arena. After freeing the animals, the flying battle and prison ship that first appeared back in Angel Island is hovering above when Robotnik flies off with it, where we run along and hop his you and then leap and grab hold onto it, in order to sneak aboard and enter Flying Battery Zone. Flying Battery is Robotnik's mighty prison and battleship, and though it is one or two nasty external areas, it mostly takes place inside, where it's actually more of a large mechanical arena zone. You can see some warehouse-esque and a little more electronic backgrounds with various black and green detailed structures, almost solely resembling microchip architecture. The ground path is shiny bronze, nearly punctured with rows of tiny holes. The eternal ground is composed entirely of large square blocks and fuel tanks, both light in colour, and with thick purple chunks of metal lining in the walls with orange edges. When outside, the interior sections are covered up by the outer shell of the flying battery with massive grey shutters that camouflage the ship with a compact bottom all over it. There are an absolute ton of different traps to overcome and features to use, including the typical end of the level prism capsules, famously located all over the level and containing various items that are other than trapped animals, rotating drills, and machines that send out worm-like bridges, and flame jets that can act as springs if the player stands on them for long enough, which will cause the pressure to send the player upwards, sometimes acting out as hidden switches. Both acts are very enclosed, with most of the action taking place in a series of rooms and corridors within the fortress. Flying Battery has a good dose of speed, with some loop-de-loops connecting narrow vertical tunnels built into the ground, and large rotating cylinders in which to spin around and tumble out the other end. Though there are some curved roads and ceilings, most of the pathways are relatively straight, with only gentle slopes as a rule. The slower areas are more puzzle-based, forcing you to wait until the right time to make a move and not get hit or crushed by any obstacle. The exterior sections are very minimal, but once outside at the bottom of the ship, you'll have to hop across a series of floating platforms, and death awaits any spined mammal careless enough to slip off and fall off. Once inside, you'll be winding your way back and forth in all directions in this long, large level. At first glance, this zone appears to be a simple, straightforward, single route stage, but there are several well-hidden alternative routes on offer for those who love to explore, which adds varying degrees of difficulty and fun. At the end of Act 1, there is a capsule that you jump on to clear the act.
Psych! Psych!
In fact, the capsule will reveal itself to be the Gapsule.
Yep. Just swap the C for the G. Simple as that.
The D comes later.
It also reveals two brown eyes and two long grey arms with giant spike balls at the end. To defeat the Gapsule, the player must stand on the switch long enough to make the robot to try and crush himself with one of his arms. You will have to move out of the way quickly enough to avoid getting hit and make the Gapsule hit itself.
Haha, stop hitting yourself. Why are you hitting yourself? You stupid. Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself.
Bullying is no laughing matter.
Repeating this 5 times will make the Gapsule explode and the animals trapped inside will be free and fast clearing the act. Before facing the boss in Act 2, you'll get trapped in a room with Robotnik behind a barrier. It's literally Barrier Eggman from Sonic 2. In this version, you have to survive the fight by avoiding the laser. Again, the same as the boss for Ringing Fortress. However, this time, the laser cannon is out of sight for attack as there are no platforms to jump onto and reach upwards. And every time the laser is fired, the room becomes smaller, giving you less room to dodge and your chance of survival decreases. But not a lot. It's very easy peasy. Eventually the room will be damaged to the point where the barrier falls on itself, making Robotnik panic and escape to the exterior of the air fortress. You'll follow through and pass through the last platforming section of the zone, where a long platform will rise up continuously, and you must stay clear of any hazards and the walls and ceiling to avoid being crushed. Very much the same that happens in Marble Garden Zone. Then you'll be able to ride out on the platform until the main boss arrives. We have the Hangmobile, which the battle takes place on a flat, thin, long horizontal bar. Dr. Robotnik will move the hangmobile in the direction of the player. Occasionally, the mobile itself will swing vertically around a total of 4 times, where the mobile can be hit once with each spin. You can jump between the spike hooks, which will trigger Robotnik to fire flames using a flamethrower on top of the mobile. He will hang underneath the platform where you are unable to attack him, and will use this opportunity to flame you up. When he stops, he will repeat the process of swinging around and using the flamethrower until enough hits are landed to defeat him. Afterwards, you simply run off to a small window interior corridor of the ship before spinning through the exit hatch and fall down onto Sandopolis Zone, a dry, isolated desert region of the island, home to the ancient Egyptian buildings and artifacts. Sandopolis Zone is an extremely large, sweltering desert area surrounded by pyramids and sand dunes in the background in Act 1. Sandopolis Zone features small sand falls which allows the player to progress upwards by repeatedly jumping, while others will automatically carry them down along their paths. The loops are different here, as the player will circle them twice before going upward. Notable gimmicks include sand blocks which the player can ride on once the block is pushed onto the black rails, long ropes which the player can jump onto its handle to descend safely, sand slides, and B-strings that catapult the player once the player stands on a certain spot. Notable obstacles include quicksand pools that can either function as bottomless pits, though some can lead to secret areas, and thick moving blocks that can act as crushers or have spikes on them, though they sometimes can serve as platforms. Once the player reaches the end of Sandopolis Zone Act 1, they will fall into a pit, in which a pyramid will rise to the sandstone. After a while, the door to the pyramid opens, and access the boss known as the Guardian, and the battle begins. Well, I say begins, it's more of a waiting game. The Guardian will follow by jumping towards you, slowly. To defeat this boss, all you have to do is lure the Guardian to the quicksand pit, which is located on the left side of the field. Once the Guardian gets to the edge of the field, all you gotta do is get behind the Guardian and hit behind its head to make it fall into the pit. I will give this boss credit for being different to just landing hits to defeat it by simply taking it out in one way using the zone's surroundings. But it's very boring, having to wait for the Guardian to slowly jump towards you. If it moved faster, then it'll be more tolerable, but sadly it's not. Cool boss idea, just not a good execution. In Act 2, Sandopolis Zone takes place inside of a pyramid with several different sized rectangular walls in the background. These walls have candles and murals depicted with hieroglyphics. The level darkens over time over 4 different stakes. This empowers these ghost-like creatures known as Hiodoros, which will attack the player once the level is at its dark state. Once they are released from the castle, they are imprisoned in which is unavoidable. Light switches hanging from the ceiling throughout the act can be used to light the act back up to its fully illuminated state, which propels the Hiodoros. The act features switch blocks which can be pushed to open barriers to subsequent rooms, although they close after a short amount of time, so you must pass through them quickly. Some rooms have bricks filled in the walls that release sand flow when broken, which raises the ground level in the room, allowing progression to higher floors but also increasing the risk of crushing the player against the roof. It is one of the most puzzle-based levels ever, with all kinds of traps and tricky features, a long and difficult zone for any player. The end of Act 2 contains a wide, open room with a tall, golden stone sphinx, known as the Egg Golem. Robotnik is piloting the golem inside and hidden away beneath the layer of stone tiles. It moves slowly from the right to the left side, sliding its huge arm as well. You're able to jump onto the arms and then jump again to hit the head of the golem, whilst avoiding the spikes covered on the golem as well, to make the stone tiles recede, exploding Robotnik in his eggmobile for a mere couple seconds to land a hit. Then the armored shell returns and the pattern resumes. In addition to the arms, an occasional laser beam is also emitted from the green eye at the top of the sphinx. It will fire diagonally downwards at you, although it takes a while to charge and fire. If you remove the shell while it charges, the charge will ease altogether. The boss hasn't been complete in a certain amount of time, as the golem constantly walks towards the left of field and you're unable to get behind it, so if you don't defeat it, you'll get crushed between it and the wall. Once landing enough hits before getting crushed, you'll send Robotnik flying away and end the zone by going through the doorway that the golem came out and open the capsule. Another doorway will be found to the right, which you'll walk through and fall straight through the floor, heading down into the volcanic underworld that is called Lava Reef Zone. Sonic drops down into the molten caves deep inside the volcano that the Death Egg crashed into. Spacious areas inside the subterranean volcanic caves of Act 1 are supported by massive thick rock pillars with a greenish glow, reaching up from the floor to the ceiling in the background. There are veins of bright lava streaming between black rocks and other endless glowing pillars in the distant abyss of the colossal caverns. The darkened areas shift from black to glowing purple regularly, and among them is a grid network of thick, purple pipes running throughout the act. Steep slopes are attained by a series of square wooden block sets, and narrow tunnels are supported by wooden beams reaching horizontally and vertically. Short thin bronze poles flank either side of some pathways with little red and yellow decorative flashing patterns on the tops. Though pits of lava and tumbling lava falls are obvious hazards, some lava also falls harmlessly in fast, wide streams. It has its speedy moments, but Lava Reef is generally more maze-like in structure. Act 1 is a massive network of tunnels mostly cut inside the rocky ground. Though a handful of open rooms can be found in the more external cave areas, it is mostly a very enclosed level, with areas of solid ground everywhere around you. Surfaces in the first act are rocky and uneven, though parts in general are more straight than curved, plus there are steep slopes are made up of series of block steps to climb. Some areas require you to hop across a pool of lava by small stepping stones, but there are plenty of other traps to keep you busy in the tunnels too. The boss battle of Act 1 takes place on a straight stretch of rock beyond a wide lava fall that covers the entire background, which is home to the Heat Arms boss. At the start, the Heat Arms will raise a pair of long tentacles with cannons.
Now, I have seen quite a bit of Japanese culture, and I don't like where this is going.
Both tentacles will fire projectiles towards the player, then lower to make way for the giant hand. It will follow the player for some time before stopping in place and attempt to crush the player. It will then go down to make way for the tentacles, and the process repeats until the giant hand is destroyed. The tentacles are optional to be destroyed, which does make dodging the projectiles easier, since there will be less of them, but the main goal is the destruction of the giant hand. Once that is achieved, everything goes all dark and quiet as the lava cools off and we enter Act 2. The Karma Lava Reef is a level of opposite extremes, and when you enter Act 2 you will see exactly why, as the environment magically changes from violent and active to a calmer, blue world of ice and crystals. The foreground is partly bluish rounded rock and partly sparkling crystals that glow from one colour to another. The disorganized rubble is overlaid this time by thin turquoise blocks laid down for you to run smoothly across. The pipes, now white in colour, abandon the grid formation and are used in the majority of the ceilings of the rooms and sections, with many of them curved. These internal icy caves generally feel a little bit less enclosed, with larger rooms and corridors. The curved piping on the floor and mostly ceilings encourage more speed when a spring is introduced, and there are many sections where you can be thrown upwards, only to use the ceiling curve to run right around and fall back down again, which gets particularly annoying if there happens to be yet another spring waiting for you at the bottom. Act 2 also introduces more platform hopping across large blocks, both moving and stationary, and the slopes are smooth and gentle with fewer steps to climb. There's a completely different style and atmosphere in these more deadly ice caverns, loaded with traps as Sonic and Knuckles move ever closer in mostly separate routes to the Master Emerald. Once you reach the thin staircase that climbs upwards against the eerie glowing cave backdrop, you'll know something's about to get serious, and that's evident to the hanging face of the Death Egg, appearing in the roof of the volcano. At the top of the stairs is our red boy Knuckles.
Oh yeah, it's been a while since we've seen him in the cutscene. Now what kind of trap will he pull up his sleeve? Or should I say glove? I wonder.
Whoa, 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 hey, hey, hey!
So you're telling me that Sonic loses rings when he gets hit by a hazard object or badnik, but then when he's rolled over by an icy boulder, he's completely fine? That's some complete BS plot armor right there.
Sonic continues to fall down to the molten lava below and lands safely on a stretch of road above the lava unscathed. Then the eyes of the Death Egg suddenly light up and torch the whole area, changing the scenery from a deep blue to a scorching red, and the middle of the platform crumbles into a lava pit, leaving Sonic literally on the edge of death. Robotnik will appear concealed in his submarine-based Eggmobile, floating away. He will launch 8 missiles which you will have to avoid, while constantly use platform hopping skills on his ultra-sized scroller. But also be careful not to outrun this section, otherwise into the lava pit you go. Eventually the missiles will stop and your path will continue to head upward, while still being in the ultra-sized scroller. The chance of falling into a bottomless pit is very high, so more platform hopping is crucial for survival before a lava fall appears with pink platforms at the top and slowly descend. Ride on the platforms until the screen starts moving, giving you full control and be able to go downwards without triggering the death plane for cheating the system. At the bottom is where the boss battle occurs. The objective of this boss is to simply dodge obstacles and not touch Robotnik while staying on the platforms and not touch the lava. You cannot physically damage him yourself, which makes this a long battle. Dr. Robotnik will shoot his iron balls, giving you something to look out for. Then Robotnik will tilt the lava in a diagonal arc and attempt to drag the player into touching him to land damage. This, however, will make the iron balls land onto him and damage his own vehicle.
For someone with an IQ of 300, he's a complete idiot.
The Hotmobile is quite a tank and can take multiple hits. In fact, it takes the most hits out of any past boss, which drags out the fight, so patience is key here for success. Once you finally land the final hit, the lava will return to normal and you'll be able to stay safely on the middle block. The castle will float down from the top, where you'll be able to hit it to complete the stage. Then everything goes black and the ground is safe to walk on. You'll start to head right and advance onwards. Hidden Palace Zone. With only one brief act, Hidden Palace is hardly a zone at all, but more of a scene to the story, and a very important one. It's an ancient, decorated palace in the same icy cave region as Lava Reef Act 2, and contains the shrine to the Master Emerald. As Sonic, you'll meet Knuckles once again, but this time there are no tricks or traps. It's a pure one-on-one brawl, Hedgehog versus Echidna.
It's come to this, the moment we've been waiting for. Sonic and Knuckles duking it out. I wonder how the fight will turn. It's very anticlimactic.
This fight is probably the easiest one in the whole game. All you really do is just spin jump on his head while he's standing or beneath him when he glides. And it's very easy to dodge his spin dash, in which you return the favour.
Maybe the next fight between these two would be much better and fleshed out.
Right?
During the battle, there is a mirror in the background, which is shown depicting a spiky, blue creature surrounded by a fiery aura fighting a large, moustached, humanoid figure in possession of the Master Emerald. What could this all mean? We'll find out in a bit. Beating his ass enough times will temporarily knock Knuckles out. Immediately after, some small explosions can be heard coming from the Emerald Chamber. This wakes up Knuckles, in which he gets up and runs across the screen, in which Tails and Sonic follow behind. Sonic and Tails enter the shrine with the Master Emerald sitting at the top among some crystals, and the holders for the Chaos Emeralds. Knuckles shakes his fist at Robotnik, who grabs the Master Emerald and begins to lead with it, but not without Knuckles putting up a fight. Sonic follows along as Knuckles grabs onto the Master Emerald, only for Robotnik to electrocute Knuckles to knock him off and makes his escape. The floor beneath Sonic and Knuckles gives away,
For plot convenience.
and both characters fall down a long vertical shaft to some steps at the bottom. Knuckles comes to and thinks of a plan quickly, then punches the barrier open and prompts you to follow. In the next room, there's a teleporter waiting for you, and the three jump into it and transport into the next zone. Sky Sanctuary Zone. This is a collection of crumbling ruins, once a grand Echidna metropolis that now hovers in pieces high above the island, thanks to the Master Emerald's power. With no other level quite like it, the ruins of Sky Sanctuary are located high up in the white, misty clouds, which you can see light up across the bottom of the sky. It's a bright, clear day, capturing the pleasant, tranquil feeling that's often present in the penultimate stages. This is counterbalanced by the dramatic storyline behind the level and the action that unfolds with it. The ground takes a very lime greenish yellow colour, and they are supported by long green pillars evenly spaced out across it, and topped by thick stone roads that are covered in bright green moss. Unlike most levels which travel from left to right, Sky Sanctuary is one of the few that is based more on vertical progression, with long horizontal paths that wind their way left and right, across many platforms as they ascend to top, with platforms starting to get shorter as you get higher. Separating the level out into 3 segments are 3 different bosses, so this is definitely an unconventional stage in more ways than one. Between these bosses, there are short courses to complete across the winding vertical structure. It's based entirely on floating pieces of land, most of which are static, but a few hover up and down. You can cross large vertical gaps and ascend the structure by way of the teleporting devices, or by entering the small doorways at the bases of tall green pillars, which have springs inside them that bounce you straight to the top. Rows of the platforms are either straight or slightly sloped, and there are no loops or curves to speak of. Some of them are linked by long diagonal lines of thin road that falls away as you run across it. Other gaps you have traversed via many platforming segments, though that is what's to be expected. The large platforms often overlap, leading to several brief alternative routes separating out and converging again at numerous intervals, or just well-hidden areas holding item boxes. Well-timed jumps on the bouncy clouds or the rising horizontal poles will often get you moving upwards, as well as making use of the large, gently bobbing platforms. With some paths leading left and some to right, it can be easy to get lost. The first boss for this first section is the Eggmobile, in an arena similar to the original fight back in Green Hill Zone. Instead of Robotnik piloting, we have Mecha Sonic, making a return from Sonic 2 in a new, revamped design. The battle itself is mostly the same to original, following the same principle of hitting the Eggmobile while avoiding the Wrecking Ball, so this is an easy boss to deal with. Land enough hits it, and the Wrecking Ball and chain becomes destroyed, with Mecha Sonic escaping, with a warp point appearing below the ground, allowing progression into the second segment of the zone. The second boss for the second section is the Flying Robotnik, the recycled boss from Metropolis Zone. The reappearance of this boss in Sky Sanctuary uses exactly the same attack pattern, as you have to deal with 7 ball pods and the fake clones. So if you know how to deal with this boss back in Sonic 2, then you should be able to repeat it no problem. The Fiend Mecha Sonic will make him escape again, with another warp point appearing in the arena's center, which will teleport you to the third and final segment of Sky Sanctuary. The end boss is Mecha Sonic himself, without any Eggmobile add-ons from his previous attempts. Here, Mecha Sonic has similar attack pattern movements from his previous incarnation from Death Egg Zone in Sonic 2, with a mixture of spin attacks and dashing across the arena. Since the boss fight is somewhat the same, you'll be able to recognize when to attack. Plus, you have rings this time, so no instant deaths and you won't get punished majorly for any mistake. Once you land the final blow, Mecha Sonic will kneel down and begin short-circuiting as electricity crackles across his body, which triggers the clearing of the zone. With Mecha Sonic defeated, the platform begins to collapse, and thus, Sonic makes a beeline onto the middle pillar, running on the spiraling road that wraps around it. As the road behind him crumbles apart, Sonic continues to run until he reaches the top of the pillar and makes a leap of faith onto the Death Egg. Sky Sanctuary is now gone. Now there's only one place left, and that is Death Egg Zone. Leaving our new ally Knuckles behind, Sonic climbs aboard the revived Death Egg one more time for the final dramatic scenes of the game. Act 1 is based entirely within, and you can see the massive far inner wall of the Death Egg in the background, making for a massive and open mechanical arena. The wall gets darker as it leads it towards the center of the screen to show the curvature of this spherical behemoth. The roads and ceilings are paved with thin vertical lines alternating between shiny silver bars and black spaces of an equal width. Once again, Robotnik goes for the more old-fashioned clockwork method of cog systems and so forth to help power his almighty machine of death. Unlike the original Death Egg Zone in Sonic 2, this version is more certainly a proper zone with two massive acts and all the trimmings. The structure, save for a few large areas for platform hopping and twisting, twirling light beam transportation, is very much an enclosed affair with corridors and rooms, and ceilings of varying heights, and the layouts are very long and complex. Most pathways are straight with only gentle slopes here and there, though you'll also rarely find large pits, sometimes fairly deep ones along the path. Some have curved buttons so that you can spin dash back up, while for others you may need to go back through an exit and try again without falling in. There are various platforms that you can use to cross dangerous electrical fields and open gaps, and also several sections where you need to use a long moving conveyor belt platform to go up or down a wide vertical shaft, avoiding the obstacles along the way. It's not a particularly fast zone, as the zone is more based on forcing you to negotiate through the many obstacles, though there are some small bursts here and there, sometimes thanks to the speedy transportation systems. The boss for Act 1 is Red Eye, and is arguably the toughest of all the Act 1 boss in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, with having two whole faces to deal with. The Red Eye itself occupies a metal pillar in the middle of the arena, with 8 spheres spinning around it. These spheres spin around either at the bottom of the pillar, or at the top where the Red Eye of the boss is. When the spheres are spinning around the bottom, you must take a jump over the spheres to hit the eye and run back to the side again. With each hit, one of the spheres will explode, firing off spikes in 8 different directions, and when spinning around the bottom, the sphere will come out across the floor as well, adding that extra difficulty of avoiding harm. When all the spheres gone, phase 2 begins.
I speak for everyone who have fought against this boss when I say, fuck this boss. Fuck this boss in particular.
The casing around the Red Eye explodes and drops away, enabling it to hover around the arena. 2 spike platforms emerge from the Red Eye itself and slowly rotate around it in either direction. After landing a single hit, the whole body of the mini-boss glows red and begins to go berserk. In this state, the platforms will spin around very rapidly, making it very difficult to score hits. In addition, the Red Eye will fire a large, sustained laser beam towards the floor. Eventually, Red Eye will come down again, giving another opportunity to land a hit. Your best option is to hug either side of the arena while Red Eye goes berserk, and play the slow and patient game in order to defeat this tough boss. After defeating the behemoth of a boss and the score is tallied, Sonic will automatically step into the middle of the arena while the ground falls through and lands safely on the sturdy platform. He will start spinning around increasingly quickly, then zap up to the highest section, where Act 2 commences. Act 2 is set entirely outside of the Death Egg, in space, in some of its external platforms. Here, the background is in a large portion of the planet below, which goes across most of the screen, curving slightly at the top and leaving some black emptiness of space above. Unlike Act 1, where the routes mainly stay near each other as you lead in your very straightforward right directions, Act 2 pathways tangle up with each other without joining, leading you in all directions into various different places in the level. This is where we first see the often repeated gravity reversal system that has Sonic running along the ceiling instead of the floor, and the level design is constantly switching between the two. The difficulty is brought up a great deal as Sonic explores the huge trap-filled external arena of this huge orbital satellite. At the end of Act 2, you'll launch into the boss arena via a vertical tube. When you arrive, Robotnik will immediately be seen behind the tube and controlling the boss of Act 2, the Death Ball. The Death Ball floats from side to side between 2 high-speed elevators that Sonic and Tails can use to reverse gravity. Death Ball has yellow bumper shields that is always positioned between Sonic and the Death Ball itself, making it impossible to damage the boss directly. In addition, the Death Ball drops these buggy-like objects from its mouth from its underside. These buggy-like objects have wheels on them bottom, and spikes on the top and move around freely. In order to land hits, you have to make the buggies land on the death ball, and you do that by entering one of the elevators to reverse gravity. This will make the buggy fly up onto the ceiling and get stuck thanks to its spikes. Then the spin dash is required to throw the buggies off the ceiling and fall down onto the death ball. Compared to Red Eye, this is easier to deal with as there is less chance of getting hit and losing rings. And it's also a creative boss, involving this axe mechanic of reversing gravity. Once Death Ball is defeated, the gravity returns to normal and the robot boss starts to burst into flames before dropping to the ground and explode. Robotnik will be shocked and begins to run away as his control panel and the elevator explodes too. Sonic and Tails chase after Robotnik and somehow unable to reach him, which enables Robotnik to quickly jump into the hatchway of the final boss, the Great Eggman Robo. After Robotnik enters the Great Eggman Robo, the ground starts to collapse from the left. Here, your survival is of most importance, so you have to run to stable ground on the right. Once it is safe, the Great Eggman Robo will come in from the left, filling the screen with its massive size. This is where the real fight begins. During the first phase, the Great Eggman Robo attacks with its massive fingers, similar to Lava Reef's Act 1 boss. Each hand is locked on the character if close enough, before rising up and then slamming down into the floor. You have to quickly dodge to get out of the way and get it hidden to destroy each finger. You could also rev up a spin dash as the fingers slam down to land in additional hits. The Great Eggman Robo will repeat this attack pattern until all fingers are destroyed and then shift into the next phase. The Great Eggman Robo drops below the platform and then appear from the left side of the screen and begin to walk slowly towards the player, destroying the left end of the platform. Flames will be emitted from the nose of the mecha, which is to be avoided as it is lethal from the moment it leaves the nose, so jumping over it requires precision. You can jump your attack to hit the nose, and while it does not damage the boss, it will cause the mech to open its chest chamber, revealing the Master Emerald inside a laser weapon that begins charging once revealed. After a few seconds, it will fire a laser across the screen that can be only dodged if you are at the apex of the jump. Getting in multiple hits while avoiding the flames and the laser will clear this phase, with the Great Egg Robo dropping down off screen, defeated. But this isn't over yet. Somehow Robotnik managed to escape and is now in his Eggmobile, carrying the Master Emerald, and flies off to the right, and the platform rapidly starts to crumble from the left as debris falls down from above as the Death Egg falls apart. All this phase is running to catch up to the Eggmobile and land his. The floor rapidly drops away during the part, nearly as quickly as the player can run. The greatest danger is flying off the end after the hit is scored, making extremely frustrating death. It's best to time your jump when you are underneath or right of the Eggmobile, as the resulting bounce can be enough to throw you off to the end of the platform and fall into an open space and cause an instant death. Once the final hit is landed, the Eggmobile will explode, followed by the Death Egg itself, and the Master Emerald will drop onto the platform next to you, marking the end of the fight, and the game. Well, it can be.
Now, one of the following things can happen here. If you haven't collected any or all of the Chaos Emeralds, then the game immediately sends you to the credits. If you collect all the Chaos and all the Super Emeralds, there's a little extra bonus. And since we have all the Chaos Emeralds, we've got one more boss to go. Behold!
The Doomsday Zone. This is the first ever extra boss, the final challenge of the game, featuring Super Sonic, as it's only accessible and playable as Sonic, having collected all the Chaos Emeralds. If you collected all the Super Emeralds as well, you'll be playing as Hyper Sonic. The beginning of the fight starts out with Sonic with 50 rings and instantly transform into super form. Just like in normal gameplay, your rings display by 1 per second, so you have to collect rings which are scattered across the Doomsday Zone during the fight in order to maintain your super state. Hitting 0 rings will make you lose your super form and fall off screen, immediately losing your life. During the fight, asteroids are also scattered around, which will shatter if you fly into them, slowing you down to a near halt. Missiles will also come out and attempt to slow you down, so you have to do your best to avoid as much as possible, as hitting a missile will make you render unable to move, pushing you back as high to the left of the screen. Around a minute of dodging asteroids and missiles and collecting rings, you will be caught up against the boss, the final weapon, a streamlined blue Agrane spacecraft. As Sonic flies around, the final weapon makes its use of its launcher at the bottom, which constantly fires 3 homing missiles at Sonic at a time, and its turrets, which fire unguarded bullets in straight lines rather often. Neither of these weapons will cause Sonic harm, but they can also temporarily immobilize him if they hit him, thus hindering efforts to destroy the final weapon. The final weapon itself is completely impervious to any direct attacks by Super or Hyper Sonic. Instead, you have to guide the homing missiles into the face of the final weapon, while avoiding the heavy ammunition it shoots. So you have to maneuver properly and quickly, since there are no rings in this area, meaning you are on a timer. When the final weapon receives a missile to the head, it will fire another in its place, making sure 3 missiles are out at all times. Once the final weapon has sustained enough hits to the head, it will burst into flames and fall off screen before exploding, ending the first phase and initiating the second phase.
Oh, we're not done. There's still more to go.
Soon after exploding, the final weapon returns to the screen in its stiff egg robot base form, carrying the Master Emerald in its hands. Oh yeah, remember that mural back in Hidden Palace Zone with the fight against Knuckles? It was depicting an abstract version of this fight. Nice little foreshadow there, Sonic team. In this phase, floating asteroids and rings will begin appearing again. From here, the player must continue to follow the final weapon. However, this isn't as easy as the beginning, as the final weapon will use the environment and attacks to defend itself, with releasing Robotnik-shaped bombs and spike blue mines if you get within reach. You have to do this quickly, as regaining rings will be a challenge, with having to avoid obstacles as well. When Sonic hits the final weapon in this state, he'll be immobilized temporarily and fall back for a few seconds, because that would be too easy if there was no knockback for attacking the final boss of the game. Especially when you're down to 10 rings and the music picks up the tempo, adding more to the stretch and knowledge that you're on death's door. But it'll be fine. Once this happens, with possessions of the Master Emerald, Sonic is flying down into the atmosphere, with Tails appearing in the tornado, catching Sonic on the wings and grabbing the Master Emerald at the end via a nifty grabbing device. Sonic then reverts to his normal state as they head down to the ocean, with the camera panning right to see Angel Island still resting on the surface. Now further away, the tornado heads across to the right and turns briefly before reappearing in the distance behind the island. They return to the Master Emerald and deposit onto the island, with a flash of white light occurs, and Angel Island slowly begins to rise again, restoring itself to an airborne state. The credits roll with Sonic and Tails heading off above the ocean, accompanied by dolphins and birds. At the end, Sonic will leap into his super form and pose with the game logo. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles. Sonic 3 and Knuckles stages are what I consider to be the pinnacle of Sonic level design. Perhaps the flowing quality that some of the more simpler maps in the previous entries are somewhat missing, but the powerful mix of speedy rise and curves and slower platforming areas are still present, and it's the beautiful layout of these that make them brilliant and remarkable. The huge stages are rife with non-linear paths that branch out into sub-routes and secret areas, all which could be never covered in one single playthrough. The different routes on offer create level maps that also happen to be huge and more complex in comparison, where they allow routes to meander away within them, pushing and pulling the player in a variety of directions to make acts last twice as long as most zones in Sonic 1 and 2. It takes you a while to discover every area and route in an act, and some shortcuts which are exclusive to Tails and Knuckles, rewarding exploration with multiple characters. Each of the zones are divided into 2 acts, but though they carry a similar theme and location, this time the 2 acts maintain a certain degree of difference between them. Not just slightly different music, but in most cases different backgrounds, structural patterns and objects. This is a great way of making each act feel more unique, as if the layout is constantly changing as you move through it, and making the game feel much bigger and more varied. The levels, particularly in the first half, are occasionally interrupted by a cutscene featuring Knuckles or Robotnik, giving them a more unique quirk compared to the traditional, straightforward approach of game progression. In addition to that, there is now a boss fight at the end of both acts, rather than just Act 2, with Act 1 being more like a mini-boss. The half of the giant special stage rings hidden in rooms dotted around the levels really encourages exploration across the vast maps, which are all accompanied by a tremendous soundtrack. These stage locations are truly among the cream of the crop in Sonic's world. Never before or since have any others had so much thought put into various unique attributes, or replay value by level design alone. Competition is an additional mode of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, loosely based on the 2-player versus mode in Sonic 2. Players can either play as Sonic, Tails or Knuckles. Unlike the 2-player versus mode, competition features 5 exclusive zones, which are Azure Lake, Balloon Park, Chrome Gadget, Desert Palace and Endless Mine. Each of the zones are looped, as the main goal for the players are to complete 5 laps around the zone to win. Competition has the following modes to play with: Grand Prix, Match Race and Time Attack. In Grand Prix, which is the main mode of competition, players race through all the 5 zones and the player who wins the most zones is declared the winner. Match Race is similar to Grand Prix, only this time you can select which zone to race on. Time Attack mode is the mode where you complete the zones in the quickest time possible. The mode is for single player only, where you can basically speedrun and practice your skills so that you'll be ready to take on your friends. Sonic 3 and Knuckles has some of the catchiest tunes in the entire series that will get stuck in your head. Like in the other entries, the soundtrack composes of many different genres for each zone. As mentioned earlier, this was when each zone had variations of similar music for each act, adding that unique and freshness to the sequel, as well as unorthodox when it comes to the genres. For example, you got lively and jazzy mix-in for aquatic theme for Hydro City Zone, to a funky beat for an ancient ruin located that is Marble Garden Zone. You also got a funky, mechanical live track with sound effects for Launch Base Zone, Mushroom Hill Zone with its cheerful and bouncy beats, Flying Battery Zone with its dramatic, with an electronic and suitable imperial feel to it, and Sandopolis Zone with its tunes capturing the appropriate elements of menace, searing heat, and mythicalism, with a melody that's familiarly Egyptian sounding and a dearly slow pace beat underneath, with Act 2 reducing the pace and adding a spooky feel whilst remaining loyal to the tune. Lava Reef is the most interesting with its choice of music. You got Act 1, which has a very lively, catchy tune that culminates into a meteoric and dramatic climax. Then Act 2 comes along and takes a very different take that's much more subtle, consisting of similar underlying rhythm, but with an almost completely different tune on top of it. It's mysterious and majestic and emphasized well throughout the icy music. Death Egg takes an electronic and fast-paced approach for both of its acts, and how could anyone not forget the most iconic track that is Ice Cat Zone with its beautiful climax of two different melodies, and Act 2 with a more calmer mix of a tune that accompanied the change in scenery. The third installment of the original Mega Drive series continued the Sonic legacy with a whole new look, playing similarly to the previous entries. Together as one, Sonic 3 Knuckles make up Sonic's largest and what made long-time fans consider the greatest adventure of the early days, and it's very easy to see why that is the case. Furthermore, Sonic 3 and Knuckles expanded the series more than what Sonic 2 had done, with Sonic receiving a whole new sprite appearance and the game being much more detailed graphically looked in general. Levels were larger and not only lasted longer as well, but also contained a plethora of alternative routes and hidden rooms, with some only accessible by specific characters. This game is best played as a whole package, as originally intended. If you only just played Sonic 3 or Sonic and Knuckles, you're only getting half the experience. So I highly recommend that you play the full package. And plus the game saves itself after each zone, so you don't have to worry about having to replay the whole game in one sitting. You can take your time with it, which is really great.
With the classic 2D games done and dusted, it's time to step into a whole new adventure experience.
Man, I cannot wait to get to the 3D world of Sonic Adventure.
What the?